Good
afternoon.
I'm very grateful for accepting my invitation to deliver this Dhamma Talk today. First and foremost, I take a little time. It is my duty to introduce our speaker, Most Venerable Ajahn Amaro. Today, we have a series of Dhamma Talk in every month. In this year, the first Dhamma Talk, for this first Dhamma Talk, I have invited our Kalyana Mitra and very long-standing friend of the London Buddhist Vihara, Most Venerable Ajahn Amaro, the Abbot of Amaravati Buddhist Monastery. He kindly accepted my invitation, although he is actually in a retreat, but as a favor to us, to the London Buddhist Vihara and to the monks of the Vihara and to the Dayakas of the London Buddhist Vihara, he accepted the invitation to deliver this talk today. Excuse me, Ajahn, I take a little time from your time. Ajahn Amaro, he had honors degree from the University of London. His subject was psychology and physiology, honors degree. And he was J.C. Horner before he became a monk. I know that he is a second cousin of I.B. Horner, late president of the Pali Text Society. Once I.B. Horner was the president of the London Buddhist Vihara as well. It is a great honor to both, they have connected with us. It is a great honor for us. Ajahn Amaro, he went to Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand on an undefined, open-ended spiritual search. However, he met, that is his destiny, he met Ajahn Chah, great forest Thai monk he met, and according to his instruction, guidance, Ajahn Amaro became a bhikkhu, became a Buddhist monk following the Thai forest tradition. Ajahn Amaro had also made a journey. He made the entire 830-mile journey on foot, chronicle in his 1984 volume, Tudang and Long Road North, in that book. Also, Ajahn Amaro is a great supporter of Lompo Sumedho, establishing Chista's Buddhist Monastery. Both they together work very hard to establish the Buddhist monasteries in the UK. Also, Ajahn Amaro is a well-known author. Among his books, The Island, Silent Rain, Ismail Boat, Copper Miles. It is actually explaining the pilgrimage in Sri Lanka, moving images, flowing Dhamma. He had visited Sri Lanka. That account he has given in his book. So so many books, Catastrophe and Apostrophe. We are very grateful to him. Both Lompo Sumedho and Ajahn Amaro are very long-standing friends and Kalyana Mitras of the London Buddhist Vihara and to the monks. I had very good opportunities to meet them at the Amaravati. As a habit, annually I stay few days per year at the Amaravati Monastery. So I am very, very grateful and thankful to Ajahn Amaro for accepting this invitation. Bhante, now will you kindly deliver today your talk, Buddhism and its relevance in the modern world? With my great respect, I would like to invite you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Bhante. Firstly, I would like to ask how long...
Recording stopped.
Oh.
How long?
Recording in progress.
I'd like to ask, how long is the whole session supposed to last? Is it 1 hour from beginning to end, or 1 hour for the talk and then the time for questions? I was looking in our correspondence, so I wanted to make it clear what the parameters were for the session today.
Yes, Bhante, 1 hour is allocated plus question and answers.
So 1 hour for the talk and then questions and answers afterwards, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. I'm very glad and honored to be invited to speak today, to offer some reflections on Dhamma for the community around London Buddhist Vihara. Also, I understand this is being broadcast, shared in various ways, so reaching beyond the scope of the London Buddhist Vihara regulars, and anyone who's heard of this event, I'm very glad you've been able to join in as well. So what I'll say today, try to keep my remarks relevant and useful for everybody, whether you have a background in Buddhism or not, or you're associated with these Theravada monasteries in the UK or not, but rather to keep the topic fairly general and open, and speak about Buddhism and the modern world as a global presence. Well, reflecting on this theme, one of the things that comes up when people ask about this is sometimes they assume that their life is totally different in the modern world. In the 2020s, the Buddha lived more than 2,500 years ago, and the world was such a different place. The world is totally transformed. People easily speak in those kind of ways and assume that your life is of a whole different nature nowadays. But if you study the Dhamma and you practice the Dhamma and you look at your life, look at the world around you, I would say that there's quite a number of aspects of our life and our world that are exactly the same, that really haven't changed very much at all in 2,500 years. Looking at the world that we have today, first of all, having a remote meeting. We're having a Dhamma talk I'm just in a room by myself, but yet I'm not. I'm in a room with 49 other people scattered all over the country and around the world. And so a Dhamma talk of this nature, with one monk sitting in a room in Hertfordshire, but yet able to be connected to people all over the country, all over the world, that wouldn't happen. And so one of the things from the olden times is communications were a lot slower and a lot more limited. If you wanted to be heard at a distance, you had to speak up. But if you were more than 100 yards away, then it's very likely nobody could hear you, because that was the range of the human voice. Nowadays, it's very different. We can gather together from all over the planet and be sharing the reflections on the Dhamma teachings. We can be having conversations with each other very easily, very effectively. So the communications are much more comprehensive and complete. In the time of the Buddha, there was much more isolation. People didn't travel very much. If you traveled, you had to travel on foot or on an ox cart or on a horse or an elephant. Travel was fairly limited. Most people didn't go far beyond their villages or their towns. Even here in Europe, in Britain, 150 years ago, it was not uncommon that someone who grew up in a village like where I was born, grew up in Kent. It wouldn't be uncommon for people not to have traveled more than 5 or 10 miles away from the village for most of their life, that they would just be born there, grow up there. And nowadays, in the current times, COVID restrictions notwithstanding, most of us are able to travel and do travel a great deal more. So there's much less social isolation, where we're much more able to travel, to be in other parts of the world, to meet other cultures, to be hearing other languages, to be mixing with people from all different backgrounds. So just for example, giving a talk, this was 200 years ago, a white Englishman giving a Dhamma talk in a Sri Lankan monastery would have been very, very strange in 1822. That would have been a very unusual thing to be happening. Nowadays, it's not that remarkable, not that strange. So there's a more social mixing. Also, from the time of the Buddha, there was much less literacy. People couldn't read. The vast majority of people couldn't read or write. The Dhamma teachings were passed on by rote learning from one generation to another, either within the monastic community or the lay community. Nowadays, literacy is very, very widespread, even in poor countries. The level of literacy, interestingly enough, in quite a number of poor countries, the level of literacy is much better than in the so-called developed nations. And so that's a very different aspect of the world. People can read and write. And another aspect of, say, the world of today, in contrast to the Buddha's time. Also, I would say another difference is that we have a lot more distractions, a lot more things going on in the course of a day. I remember reading a statistic a number of years ago where someone was talking about the flood of information that we experience nowadays. So a person today in 2022, we receive and have to process during the course of a day, in comparison to somebody, say, 150 years ago, whether it was in Sri Lanka or here in Britain, thousands of times more information per day, just pieces of news, all of that information that's coming through the newspapers, through conversations, through communications, through the internet, through the emails and the various news streams and Facebook and WhatsApp and all these different communications. Vast increase of information that is being processed on a daily basis, greatly different than hundreds of years ago. So that our minds are stretched in a way to deal with a lot more data, a lot more information about our own lives, about the world. And so that was a very different aspect of the Buddha's world. Well, another of the changes that have come about is the level of health and longevity, so that the average life expectancy, again, here in Europe, say, for someone 2,000 years ago, life expectancy of 35 or 40 would be quite average. If you live to be 50 or 60, you'd be considered a really old person. Probably quite similar in Southeast Asia and the Far East, that the longevity, the lifespan of people is much greater nowadays, and the infant mortality rate. When I first went to live in northeast Thailand in the late 70s, in Southeast Asia, I don't know how it was in Sri Lanka, but it was in the poor region of the Isan, the northeastern Thai provinces. It was quite common for in a family to have 8 or 10 children, and 2 or 3 of the children would die. It's like that was kind of average, that you have a large number of children and a few of them don't make it past 5 years old. That was, I would say, part of the familiar landscape of that world. That's very different nowadays, and so I think that's also good to see that those kind of things have changed. That is quite different is, I would say, there's a greater degree of social equality. Women in the workplace, the ability for people to step out of a poor background and make a success in the world. People who are, able to rise according to their skills, their abilities, is far greater nowadays than it was in the ancient times. Also, maybe the last thing to mention is quite, that does seem something new in the world that didn't exist in the Buddha's time, is the threat of nuclear war, and that certainly did not exist even 100 years ago. But we can feel that, that's totally different. The threat of complete destruction hangs over us now, whereas it didn't before. But I would say that even though we didn't have nuclear weapons as a human community, certainly that one of the things that I would say was exactly the same in the time of the Buddha was that there could be droughts, and that could have the effect of a devastating war. Suddenly there's no rain, there's no harvest, nothing to eat, people dying in thousands and thousands, or the incidence of COVID has told us, even though we've got so many doctors, so many hospitals, so many medicines, still a disease rises up, and then hundreds of thousands, millions of people are affected by the disease and killed by that presence of that plague. So some of the things that we might feel are very modern and very new to the world, I feel they have exact counterparts from the Buddha's time. Well, then looking at areas where I would say things haven't changed very much at all, and that very directly relevant is in the Buddha's teachings and practices related to our life as a human being, relating to other human beings in our family, relating to people in the workplace, relating to society, and also with our minds, the presence of our patterns of thinking, our memories, our imagination, our emotions, our moods. Those are still exactly as they, I would say, as they were in the Buddha's time. The presence of the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, the 5 khandhas, the way that they work, and the way that the Buddha's teachings describe them, and also the practices of wise reflection and meditation, how those practices enable us to work with them. Those are exactly the same. So I would say that at the beginning of this talk, in terms of Buddhism's relevance to life in the modern world, in those most essential areas of our lives, our family, our work, our body, our mind, and relating to the society and also the environment, those are really unchanged. And so I'm probably very biased, but I would say that in this respect, that the Buddha Dhamma is highly relevant to our lives. That if we look at the things that are, say, making up the majority of our days, and fill our attention, our body, our family, our work, our living space, our relationship with our neighbors and the society, and the relationship with the environment. That's all as it was in the Buddha's time. And so the teachings that he gave then, I would suggest, are very vividly and helpfully relevant in this time, in this day and age. Also, with this question, Buddhism and its relevance to the modern world, I think it is interesting to take the word Buddhism and to tease it apart. That you've got two different aspects to the word. There's the Bud and the ism. So that the Bud part of the word, Bud means awake, aware, knowing. That's what the word means. And so that, I would say that's the essence of the Buddha's way, is being awake. We call him the Buddha, the one who is awake. Awake. And when he was asked to define his own nature, when he met the Brahmin Dona, and Dona had seen the Buddha's footprints in the dust along the road and thought, well, what kind of a being made these footprints with these extraordinary marks and these patterns that pressed into the sand, the dust of the road? And he followed the footprints off into the forest and saw the Lord Buddha sitting under a tree meditating, and he was amazed by the sort of radiant, peaceful, serene presence. And Brahmin Dona knelt down in front of the Lord Buddha and said, "Yeah, excuse me, are you a deva?" And the Buddha said, "Yeah, I'm not a deva." "Are you a Brahma god?" "No, I'm not a Brahma god." Are you a yaka, a celestial demon?" "No, I'm not a yaka." He said, "Are you a human being?" He said, "No, I'm not a human being." And he said, "Well, please excuse me, but if you're not any of these things, then what are you?" And he said, "That whereby I would be a Brahma god, or a deva, or a yaka, or a human, that has been cut off. That has been rendered like a palm tree stump, and deprived of the conditions for existence, and rendered incapable of arising in the future. That by which I could be defined as a person, that's been cut off." And then so he says, "Well, how can I know you or refer to you? How should I understand what you are?" And then he said, the Lord Buddha said, "Buddhosmi, know me as one who is awake." That's one of the reasons why we use the word Buddha to refer to our great teacher and the founder of this religious form. So the Buddha is the essence of the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha's practice, the Buddha's way, being awake. So I would say that's absolutely and necessarily, definitely relevant. The ism, I would say that refers to the different forms that this teaching has taken, the different communities, whether it's in Sri Lanka or Thailand or Myanmar or Indonesia or Tibet or China, Japan, Korea, Mongolia, wherever the sasana has spread, or into the West, then the cultural forms, the styles, the color of the robes, the particular say rituals and practices and pujas and such like that we do, the language of the scriptures are put into, whether it's in Pali or Sanskrit or Tibetan or Chinese or Japanese or Korean, all of those different cultural forms and styles, I would say that's all part of the isms. There are many Buddhisms, and that I think is always in a state of flux and change according to cultural movements, whether the sasana is growing or degenerating, who is, say, a prominent teacher or a leader having an impact upon the society where the Buddha's teaching is being practiced and expounded. All of those change a huge amount over time, and they can be relevant or not. They can be something that we relate to or not. They can be useful or not. So I would say that the isms are the less, and this is my probably biased view, personal view, but I would say that's far less important than the Buddha aspect. So rather like the peel of a fruit, you have an orange, and the skin of the orange, you take the skin off, and then there's the fruit that you can eat on the inside. And so that I would say that the isms are like the skin, the peel of the orange or the banana, the skin of the fruit, and that's what we take off, and that's the protective outer coating, but it's the sweet fruit on the inside. That's the essence. That's the thing that is most genuinely nourishing. So with respect to aspects of that quality of awakened awareness, or that the Buddha aspect of Buddhism that is, I would say, essentially and say comprehensively relevant, whether it's in Asia, or whether it's here in the UK, whether it's in North America, South America, anywhere on the planet. I would say that one of the aspects of its relevance is the embodiment of loving kindness, that quality of non-contention. I think this is a most extremely helpful and beneficial principle that's right at the heart of the Buddha's way. And when the heart is awake, when there is that genuine awake, aware quality, then the emotion that is most fundamental and basic to that heart that is awake and aware is that of loving kindness, or acceptance, an open-hearted acceptance, an appreciation of all beings, all things. That quality of metta, which I like to translate as a radical acceptance, a complete open-heartedness. Doesn't mean to say that we like everything, or we can say understand every being, or we like every being, or we like every experience or sensation or mood that comes into our field of experience, but we can recognize that it belongs as part of the natural order. And so that metta, I think, is one of the great blessings and say powerful attributes of Buddha Dhamma, insofar as it's pointing that we can live in relationship to the world with a heart free of contention. It's essentially the way of non-contention, so that in our human society and in our instinctual and historical way of handling things, when we meet with something that we don't like, or people that we disagree with, we fight against them, or we argue against them, we complain about them, we criticize them, or in most extreme cases, we go to war. But one of the great blessings I feel that Buddhism can bring to the world is learning how to deal with our differences of opinion in a way that is non-contentious. You're not generating hatred towards the other, but rather it's that attitude of loving kindness is encouraging a quality of cooperation and collaboration, finding a way that we can work together. Whether your religion happens to be Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism or Islam, or whether you have no religion at all, whether you're a Sikh or a Taoist or a member of the Communist Party, then I would say loving kindness is always relevant, irrespective of one's religious affiliation. Then I feel that the example and the explanations and the methods of developing loving kindness, the heart of non-contention, are universally applicable and universally beneficial. And so when we're talking about, say, Buddhism and its relevance in the modern world, and I would say that embodying that quality of kindness and non-contention, that's a marvelous and very practical and realistic way of spreading Buddha Dhamma. You're not even necessarily labeling it Buddha Dhamma, but that quality of non-contention, that quality of open-hearted kindness, that is something that is very beautiful and powerful and important to bring it into the world. And so I would say that Buddhism doesn't have a monopoly on kindness. That would be ridiculous to say that or think that. But I would say that the more that we can embody that quality in ourselves, then the more that ripples out to the people that are around us, that in our family, in the workplace, on the street, in society. And also it informs our attitude towards our living environment, to the other creatures that we share the world with, in the water, in the air, and in the ground. say is a way of demonstrating a profound respect and attunement to the living world, and a respect and a care for the preservation of our ecology. The ecos is in Greek, I think it literally means the house. So kind of ecology is studying the house, or eco-friendliness is looking after your house, being friendly, taking care of your own house. And I feel that's a skillful way just of thinking of it, just as you look after your own home and you clean the carpets and do the washing up and keep the place clean and tidy and well repaired. That's a similar kindly and respectful, caring attitude that Buddhism encourages us to have towards the living world that we are a part of. Another of I feel the aspects of Buddha Dhamma that is universally applicable, again, irrespective of whether a person happens to think of themselves as having no religion, or being a Catholic or a Protestant, or being a Hindu or a Sikh or a Muslim, or someone belonging to a pagan religion or a tribal religion, whatever shape it might take, is the Buddha's very skillful teachings in how to be a well-rounded person. There's a term that is sapurisa, and I feel this is not used a great deal in Dhamma teachings in the West, but I feel it's a very helpful term to understand and reflect on. Sat means good or valuable or beneficial. It's a positive prefix. Sat purisa means a person, so a good person. So when the Buddha talked about the qualities of a sapurisa, a good person or a well-rounded person, it's a useful expression in English, sapurisa, then he outlined 7 qualities, and there are many lists in the teachings of the Pali Canon, and so people will probably be familiar with a number of them. But I like to share this list of the 7 qualities of a well-rounded person, because what they point to, it's a kind of, say, a broad mindfulness, or a comprehensive mindfulness, paying attention, being, it's like, if we want to be a well-rounded person, we want to be a really good person, we want to function effectively in the family, in the workplace, in society, and be living in a harmonious and peaceful and beneficial way, then these 7 qualities are very, say, supportive and helpful for that aspiration. And it represents a kind of say, a broadness of view. Someone who is observant is a good way. You're watching things, you're seeing how things work, you're using your reflective and investigative capacity. How does that work? Where's this coming from? You look what happens if you get this, then you get that. So the first of the qualities of a sapurisa, a good person, is Dhamma, and this is referring to one who considers or reflects on the causes or the origins of things, where things come from. This is a very sort of thumbnail sketches and definitions of these terms, but that hopefully it covers it enough to give you an impression or an understanding. So Dhamma, considering causes or where things come from, how things are formed. So that's the first one of the 7. The second one is Attha, which is A-T-T-H. Doesn't mean atta as in self, but it means like the consequences or the results or the direction that things go in. So those first 2 are considering where things come from, how they're formed, what their origins are, and then where things are going. What's going to be the result of this? What's going to be the probable, say, conclusion? Where is this going to end up? So you're using your memory, your intelligence, you're using your imagination, your understanding of how living systems work and how the world works. Then the third one on the list is Attha, A-T-T-A, Atta, knowing yourself, knowing your own personality. Are you comfortable in crowds of people? Are you shy in crowds of people? Are you a mathematician? Are you a musician? Are you 80 years old? Are you 18 years old? What are the different things that make up your life as a person at this time in this place? Kind of knowing your own character, knowing your own personality, knowing where you feel that you do well, where you don't do well. So that atanyuta, knowing yourself, is a part of that quality of well-roundedness. Then matanyuta, that is the fourth one, is knowing the right amount. So, and this relates to other aspects that I'll talk about in a little while about knowing the right amount. So moderation in all things is an English phrase that is very sort of relevant and or comparable in this respect. So matanyuta, knowing the right amount. So when you're eating, knowing when you've had enough, knowing when you're taking exercise, knowing when you've gone far enough, yeah, knowing when you're out shopping, when you bought enough, yeah. When you're having a conversation or you're talking to someone, knowing, okay, I've been talking for 5 minutes, yeah, probably time to be quiet and let them speak. You know, I haven't heard what they've got to say yet. So matanyuta, knowing the right amount. Again, it's showing this quality of circumspection, looking at the bigger picture, considering. Okay, I'm eating. How much do I need to eat to stay healthy? Okay, I'm taking exercise. How much do I need to actually get fit rather than doing too much and damaging my body? Or I'm not doing enough. If I only run for 100 yards, I'm not going to build up a lot of strength. So maybe I should run for longer. So matanyuta, knowing the right amount. Then kalanyuta is the next one, the fifth one on the list. Kala is time. So knowing the right time for things. Is it the moment to speak up? Is it the moment to be quiet? What appointments have you got? Just a basic punctuality. So kalanyuta is being punctual, say keeping to your agreements. If you said the talk will begin at 5 o'clock, then you're ready just before 5 o'clock. So kalanyuta, knowing the time, knowing the right time for things. When it's time to, I would say it also applies in communications. When it's time to crack a joke, when it's time to be serious, when it's time to speak up and volunteer, when it's time to be quiet and take a back seat. So kalanyuta is, I would say, related to that aspect of attunement to the time, the place, the situation. And then the last two on the list, parisanyuta. Parisa means a group, or the Buddha Parisa means the Buddhist community. So who are you with? So right now, giving a talk through the London Buddhist Vihara. So I'm assuming this, and I can see names on the screen here. Quite a lot of names that look as though they're people from Sri Lanka. Not everybody by any means, but who am I talking to? That it's not everybody is from Sri Lanka, but a large proportion are. And so parisanyuta is okay, and these are mostly adult people who've chosen to listen to a Dhamma talk on a Saturday evening. This is what they're doing at least in the UK at 5:30 on a Saturday. So if I was talking to people in a retirement home who are not Buddhists, I would probably be speaking differently. If I was invited to give a talk at a management college, then I'll be speaking differently. If I was talking to a classroom of 6-year-olds, I'd be speaking differently. If I was with my family, I would be speaking differently. So who are you with? The parisa. And that, again, it's a quality of attunement, of being observant, assessing who am I with? What are people interested in? What am I here for? Why am I with this group of people? Am I just sitting on a bus with a group of strangers? Are we all traveling together? Are we well known to each other? Am I supposed to be leading this? Am I supposed to be following? Yeah, all of that I would say is part of the parisanyuta, attunement to the group, and who you are with, what you're a part of, and what brings you together. And then the last one is Pugalanyuta. Pugala is a person. So just like you had Atanyuta, knowing your own personality, Pugalanyuta is knowing the personality of others around you. Like, so if you're with your child, what's their personality? Where are they at? How old are they? You're with your parent, your father, your mother. What's their personality? Where are they at? What's the relationship like? Are you supposed to be taking care of them? Are they supposed to be taking care of you? What's the dynamic there? So all of these 7 qualities, so Dhammanyuta, Attanyuta, Atanyuta, Matanyuta, Kalanyuta, Parisanyuta, Pugalanyuta, lots of Pali words to remember. I feel that these are all pointing to that a broadening of mindfulness. And so in terms of even though we're using Pali words from the Buddha's teachings, I would say that these qualities as described and then praised within the Buddha's teaching, they are universally relevant and helpful, whether, again, whatever country, whatever nationality you have, whatever age you are, whatever your religious disposition might be, then these qualities are aspects of life that are going to bring benefit to you and to benefit to others as well. Sapurisa Sangseva, to draw close to such good people, is the very first factor supportive of stream entry. But I'd say even in a way more significant than that is that developing these qualities in ourselves, not just looking for them in other people, but to be the sapurisa, to draw close to the sapurisa of your own citta, that good, well-rounded, mindful, unselfish, respectful qualities of your own heart. That's going to be greatly beneficial, greatly enriching, and greatly liberating. And that's something that can be, say, worked into the format of anybody's life, and the benefits of developing those qualities will be very, say, apparent. And as the Buddha said, if you live in a way that is respectful, that is harmless, that is honest, then you draw good people to you. You sleep easily at night. The wise respect you, and then when you pass away, you have no regrets. And so this developing these virtues and these wholesome qualities are something that are of great and immediate benefit to everyone, I would suggest. Well, one of the aspects of modern times, like I was saying, we have so much more information. I saw a statistic a few years ago. There was a Neil Gaiman, the novelist, the author, was giving a talk at I think the Literacy Society, and he was encouraging child literacy and reading, and he was describing how he'd met one of the vice presidents of Google a little while before, and this person from Google had told him that from the dawn of civilization about 10,000 years ago up to 2007, the humanity generated in that period, 10,000 years or so, 5 exabytes of information. So an exabyte is like a sort of beyond. They have a gigabyte, a picobyte, and then an exabyte is beyond that. So this 5 billion pieces of information over that 10,000 year period. I'm not sure if that's exactly what an exabyte is. I'm just, my memory might be inaccurate, but that was the amount in 10,000 years. He said, so that was the total amount of information in every book that was written, every newspaper published, every poem that was written, every letter that was written, every film that was made, every piece of data created by humanity in 10,000 years. And this, he said, now, from 2007 to the present, we've created the same amount of information in the last 15 years, and so that multiplication of information and activity, stuff to be paying attention to. The complexity in our society is enormous, is kind of incalculably large, and probably nowadays you probably have 5 exabytes of information produced every couple of days. I haven't looked at the statistics recently, but I wouldn't be surprised with the blizzard of information and the technological changes and expansions of recent years. So anyway, we have a lot to distract us nowadays, a huge amount, and that also the abundance, even though you might feel, well, you know, the shops in my local supermarket are empty, but generally speaking, in the West in particular, and the first world countries, if one can still use that terminology, there's a lot of stuff. There's lives are say, surrounded by a lot of abundance in terms of food and material objects and things to make us comfortable. So we have a lot of abundance, a lot of distractions, a lot of complexity in our world these days for most people, certainly here in the Western world. So how can the Buddha's teaching be relevant with respect to that complexity, that abundance, and that kind of level of distraction and the shortening attention span that many people are experiencing? So there's different ways of approaching this, but I would say that one of the interesting qualities, it might not seem to be directly related, but I would say that one of the most helpful ways of dealing with abundance and distraction and complexity is the 5 precepts, the quality of sila, so that paying attention to how we relate to the things that we consume, to the lives of the beings, the people around us, to how do we relate to other people's property, and in terms of our honesty of our speech and our relationships, and consuming and consuming of drugs and alcohol. If we are keeping the 5 precepts, it's really interesting. I feel that even though it might seem like sila is one place and busyness and distraction and complexity is somewhere else, but if you have a principle of living in an honest, modest, and respectful way, then the living in abundance and being surrounded by many things, many choices, it's less distracting, you're less drawn into it. And if the mind is drawn into it, then the way it engages with the material world and sensory activity has less negative karmic consequences in terms of spending too much money or engaging in unskillful relationships or deceiving other people and so on and so forth. So I feel that if we take the Buddha's advice and use the 5 precepts as a standard for behavior, again, you don't have to have it cast in the form of Buddhist language, but I would say it translates across all human societies. If we're respectful of life, if we're respectful of people's property, if we're respectful of appropriate relationships, if we're respectful of honesty and we are modest or restrained in consuming intoxicants, then as this little verse that we chant at the end of the ceremony of the 5 precepts, silena sugatinyanti, silena poga sampata, silena niputinyanti, tasma silang visodaye. So these are the 5 precepts, imani pancha sikapadani. Sila is a source of happiness, sukati. Sila is a source of true wealth, bhoga sampada, comprehensive wealth, abundant wealth, bhoga sampada. Silena nibutin yanti. So sila leads towards peacefulness. So if we are living in a way that respects the 5 precepts, then maybe it's easy to understand how that leads to happiness, because there's a lot of self-respect, no regrets. Leads to peacefulness, because you don't have to preserve any lies, or you're not deceiving your partners and feeling self-critical and anxious because of being unfaithful. But people sometimes wonder, well, how does it lead to wealth, bhoga sampada? That's how would it be that the keeping the precepts leads to that kind of prosperity? But there's an interesting sutta in the Book of the Fives in the Anguttara Nikaya, sutta number 47, which is about wealth. So the Buddha says that I'll expound on the subject of wealth, bhoga, wealth, and but what he talks about, that there are 5 kinds of wealth, and the 5 kinds of wealth that he describes are faith and virtue and learning and generosity and wisdom. So he's not talking about piles of cash. He's not talking about having a big house, or let alone a big car or a big chariot, but rather that kind of wealth, bhoga, it's to do with the state of the citta, your heart, your mind. So from the Buddhist point of view, to be really rich means that you have a lot of faith, you are virtuous, you have a lot of understanding of intellectual learning, that you're generous, and that you're wise. And if there are those 5 qualities, then you're really bhoga sampada. There's abundant richness, and one of the aspects of that I feel is also very, very helpful. Maybe it's also reflected in the 8 precepts and the principles of renunciation, is that when there is a quality of self-respect, when you have learnt to deal with liking and not being say compelled to follow that by going out shopping or just compulsively chasing after what you like, so you have to get it, but you can know that you like something or you appreciate something without having to buy it or maneuver or manipulate to get it, then there's what you're doing is you're supporting the quality of contentment, santuti, to be content, and so that's in a way the secret of wealth, or the secret of that bhoga sampada, that fullness of being, having a sense of having everything that you need, and being experiencing abundance, is you have a fewness of needs. You don't need a lot of stuff to be content. There's a sense of a blessed simplicity. You're not looking to have more stuff in order to be happy, but rather it's you're kind of leaning away, inclining away from the consumer society to be delighting in a fewness of needs. You don't have to have a lot of stuff in order to feel comfortable, to be complete. You're not competing with your neighbors or trying to get a fancier watch or a fancier car or a fancier, a larger number of degrees or a bigger monastery, to compete, but rather there's that quality of santutita, of contentment, is something that is being developed, and then the Buddha pointed to that, those qualities of wealth. If they are there, then contentment, that sense of fullness, that wholeness of being, is very easy to access, as nothing is missing, nothing is lacking, because the heart is attuned to Dhamma, to the Dhamma of the here and now. So what could really be lacking? What could be missing? You're totally at ease. You don't have to get any extra thing, any material object, or be close to a person in order to feel good or to feel happy. You're not sort of trying to get that thing to make you feel whole or complete. So that also, in terms of the aspect of loving kindness, it also reflects that living lightly on the earth, and a sense of respect and care for the environment. So not just in terms of our living, our home, that ecos, but the bigger ecosphere of the planet and the living earth. So that quality of contentment helps us to live lightly on the earth, to have fewness of needs, to be not, say, consuming things needlessly or recklessly and causing damage and harm to the ecosystem more than is unavoidable. And so that is, I would say, is a part of that quality of contentment and ease and self-respect, say respectful and honest and kind towards all other beings. The last thing maybe to talk about is that of meditation and mind training, mindfulness. And so nowadays, Buddha's teachings on meditation very widely spread around the planet. Mindfulness-based stress reduction or mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. These are ways that Buddhist meditation is sort of repackaged in the modern world in terms of say the workplace or in schools or in therapy and such like. And so many people around the planet are being helped by these practices. Also within our own lives, directly using the Buddha's teaching, and more specifically using the many methods that the Buddha outlined for meditation. Not just the techniques described in, say, mindfulness-based stress reduction or mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, but in the large and comprehensive range of meditation teachings that the Buddha gave. I feel that using meditation in our lives, taking time to practice meditation in a formal way, learning how to focus the attention in the present moment, to train the mind not to follow its sort of distracted impulses, to be able to, again, as I say, to be able to be mindful of our emotions and to be able to not be following them blindly. So whether if you dislike something, you don't have to hate it. If you like something, you don't have to chase after it. If something is uninteresting, you don't have to dismiss it, but rather there's a meditation brings a set of skills that helps us to deal with our thinking mind, our emotions, and our relationships in a very skillful way. So that I would say that in terms of its relevance, Buddhism's relevance in the modern world, providing those resources on meditation, spelling out meditation skills, again, irrespective of whether you happen to be a communist or a Sikh or a Hindu or a Muslim or a Taoist or a Native American or an Australian Aborigine, and native communities from all over, tribal communities from Africa or South America, wherever we are, learning those skills of focusing the attention in the present, learning to to respond to emotional impulses rather than to react to them. These are universally relevant and helpful, and can bring a great deal of peace and clarity and fulfillment in our lives. The final aspect of meditation, I would say, along with paying attention to the present and learning to let go of thoughts and emotions and not get entangled in them, is in a way to more fully and completely understand the whole field of experience, and to learn to recognize the sensory world, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, remembering, imagining, to see all those aspects of the five khandhas, the five groups of 5 areas of experience, to know them as impermanent, uncertain, unsatisfactory, not self, to know them as empty, and that perspective that Buddha Dhamma gives us to know the world, but not to be limited by the world, not to be bound by the world. This is a profound and liberating wisdom, and this is why I would say is one of the most beautiful, and it's a subtle gift, but it's a most beautiful and powerful gift that the Buddha Dhamma can bring to our lives, and is highly relevant. So in the midst of the workplace or the family or and living in society, then developing that insight into anicca, dukkha, anatta, into uncertainty, unsatisfactoriness, not self, recognizing the empty nature of experience, of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, moment by moment, even right now, sitting here looking at our screens or hearing these words, there's a sound of a word, but that is sunya, it is empty. There's visible forms on the screen. Yeah, there's a form, but that form is empty. The Buddha said, sanya, it's like a banana plant, a plantain, just a sheaf of leaves. There's no core, there's no heartwood. Vedana, feeling, he says, it's like a water bubble. It's like when the rain lands and splashes on a puddle and the bubble forms for a moment, and then it's gone. The body itself, rupa, is just like a lump of foam floating on the river. The thoughts and feelings, emotions, they're like a mirage, like a hazy image in the desert. And vijnana, discriminative consciousness, is like a conjuring trick, like a magical trick. There's a form but no substance. And then the Buddha also said to the Brahmin student Mogaraja, when Mogaraja said, how can you relate to the world and avoid the king of death? How can we avoid being seen by the king of death? And the Buddha said, if you see the world as empty, Mogaraja, then the king of death will not find you. See all things. And then the world, in the Buddha Dhamma expression of things, is see the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. That the world is the world of our field of experience. So in our lives, if we can recognize that what we see, the things around us, the people around us, our bodies, our minds, yes, there's a form there are relationships there, but they are essentially empty, they are sunya, then the heart is freed from any kind of limitation, is freed from any stress, any burden in relationship to those aspects of our world. So that might seem a bit mysterious. Well, how can I see the emptiness of my mother, my father, my children, my job, my car, the traffic on the road? If I'm not seeing the other cars, I'm going to crash into them. Or if I'm appreciating the emptiness of my child or my mother, my father, how do I talk to them? So it's not a foolish kind of pretending there's nobody there, that the world of appearances functions perfectly according to the laws of cause and effect, but they are appearances, like a bubble, like a mirage, like a conjuring trick, there's a form but no substance. And what that means on a practical level is, rather than grasping tightly hold and saying, I am this person, you are that person, I've got to get there at this time, there's a loosening of the grip, a relaxation of the grip. So rather than clinging tightly, there's a relaxation. So you're still holding, but there's a softness there. So Luang Por used to define Nibbana as the reality of non-grasping. It's not a special heaven somewhere else to go off to when we die, but rather Nibbana is that coolness of heart when we let go of self-obsession, we let go of a self-centered perspective, and there's a relaxation of the grip, so that the heart moves to a Dhamma-centered perspective or a nature-centered perspective. It's just that loosening of that grip of relaxing the grasping habit. And so then we do what we need to do. We go to work, we relate to the family in a heartful and sincere way, but we're not holding on to ourselves or the people around us or the work that we do with an attitude of grasping and attachment and identification, but rather there's a gentleness, a kindness in the way that the world is held. And then we find that nothing in the world, nothing within us, nothing around us brings any limitation. The heart is free and is unburdened. So I see that the hour has gone by almost, and I'll offer these words for consideration this evening. And if people have any questions they'd like to ask, I'll leave it to Venerable Sila Vimala, Bhante, to look after the questions, or somebody else there at the London Buddhist Vihara to feed those through, or invite people to speak as is appropriate. Anyway.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you very much. So much grateful to you, Bhante. Now, there may be many questions from our audience. but only limited questions are actually according to time being. There is a symbol of palm, symbol of hand. If you have any question, please click that symbol. Then we allow you to ask your question. We don't need interpretation, so and short form, ask the question, please. The question here. Well, until the people, audience get prepared, I would like to ask Ajahn a question. A little bit actually, I wanted to get your view, your perspective regarding confession. In the churches, people have an opportunity for confession. According to our Buddhist teaching, what type of concept or what type of practice we can apply for this practice of confession?
That's a very good question, Bhante. You're not the first person to ask that. So the way I think about this is it's a combination of both. In our monastic tradition, on the moon days, Patimokkha days, when we recite the training rules, there's a ceremony of confession before that, and so I feel that can be transferred. It's a formal, say, exchange between two monks or two nuns before the recitation of the rules. And then you go through each category of the rules and say that for whatever of these rules or this category that many occasions on many different bases, then I have transgressed these rules, and I ask for your forgiveness. I acknowledge this. I ask for your forgiveness. The other person says, do you see this? And you say, yes, I acknowledge this, and they say. So that has been duly noted. So there's a way of expressing it. It's a kind of formalized exchange, but it's so between two trusted companions, and that and so that there's a sense of you know each other, and the other person isn't going to react or blame you, but they are there to hear, to acknowledge, and so it's a formalized exchange. But I feel that for people in the lay community, they can use that with their partners or between members of their family or people in the workplace or in the community. You can use a similar form. The other part that I like to encourage is what we call the asking for forgiveness, so that and many of the lay people gathered here will be familiar that, say, when you have done a 10-day retreat together, or you've been staying in a monastery for a certain amount of time, when you're parting company with someone, or you've been living in a monastery for a few weeks or months, then when you're parting, then you ask for forgiveness, and you say, for whatever I have done by body, speech or mind, by the 3 doors of body, speech or mind, that's been offensive or upsetting, then I ask for your forgiveness. And then the acharya, the teacher or the senior person says, I forgive you, and please forgive me also. Aham kamami tayapi me kamitabang, or tumehi me kamitabang. I forgive you, and please forgive me also, because the acharya or the senior person recognizes that they too can have done things or said things that have been upsetting or offensive. So it's a way of consciously clearing the slate. So in terms of a confession comparable to what they have in the Catholic tradition, it doesn't exist in the Church of England, but it's more of a Catholic tradition, as far as I know. But I feel it's a very skillful psychological tool to acknowledge that that you've lost the plot. You got distracted, you got carried away, you followed an impulse of some kind, and so that it's acknowledging the transgression and then letting that be sort of known, but also the other person's not going to blame you or criticize them. In all these years of me being a monk, no one has ever said, "How could you do that?" or "What were you thinking of?" There's a respectfulness and a receptivity there, so that I feel if people want to make their own version of either the asking for forgiveness ceremony or combined with the monastic confession form, then that can be, very much based upon the Buddha's teaching and traditional practices, and be an effective psychological tool, say between a lay person and a monastic, or between a wife and a husband, or parent and child, and so that it's because as you know, Bhante, the Buddha said how rain softens and rots that which is covered up, and that which is not covered up isn't destroyed or compromised by the rain, so that which has been covered up be open to the air, so that things won't rot or fester, and so that that kind of openness and acknowledgement that we've gone wrong somewhere, we've lost the plot, we've got distracted, and then endeavouring to do better. Again, the Lord Buddha said many times to recognise our transgression as such, and to endeavour to do better in the future. That is called development in the Buddhasasana, in its Dhamma and discipline. So the Buddha wasn't assuming that we'd never make mistakes, or expecting us to never make mistakes. Rather, he was expecting us to make mistakes. That's why in the Buddhist tradition, people take their refuges and precepts every week. It's not just the baptism that you have once and then you're good the rest of your life. It's like, no, you have your baptism once a week. You refresh that commitment to the precepts and the refuges because we get distracted. So I would say that confession is a way of, and that can be set up again between a lay person and a monastic, or between two lay people, and to say, can we set this up so that I can acknowledge this wrongdoing, or that to clear my mind of this. And so I feel it is a helpful psychological tool to recognize that something that's been done that is inappropriate or harmful, but also not letting that be how we define ourselves, or not being something that is clung to and attached to, but rather it's recognized, that was a stupid thing to have done, that was a mistake, okay, I'll do my best to learn from that, and and so I will endeavor to do better in the future.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
There's a couple of hands up there. I see Lux and Francois.
Hello, Bhante. Hello, Ajahn Amaro. Thank you very much for this talk. I just wanted to ask whether you had considered how to get the 20s and 30-year-olds for them to see the value, the treasure that there is in Buddhism. Because I think when we're parents, we can take our children, they come along with us to the temple, and then they disappear.
About 15 to 25, at least.
Yes. Well, and then you see some people come back when they're later on in life. It's just how can we show them that there's a lot that Buddhism can help them with in that time frame. I know their lives are very busy, but there's a lot that they can do to help with their mind and ease their minds. Any thoughts on that, Bhante?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a fairly universal condition. So between 15 and 25, there's what I would call a recklessness gene takes over, and so the mind is inclined towards a lack of reflection. It's inclined towards recklessness, risk taking, and I think it's partly it's an there's a couple of things that come to mind. Firstly, is that one of the interesting teachings of the Lord Buddha is that one of the causes of faith is suffering. That it's actually only when things have got really painful, when you've had a broken heart, or you're laid up in a hospital, or you've crashed a car, or that you've speculated all of your money away and you're massively in debt. Dukkha is a proximal cause for saddha, for faith, and so that can be that it's the painfulness or the inescapability of some difficult condition, because that kind of recklessness between say 15 and 25, it brushes that aside. You feel like you're immortal, nothing can hurt you, that life's going to be like this forever. And it's ridiculous, that it doesn't make sense logically, but that's easily how you feel it to be, having been that age myself. And I went into a monastery when I was 21 because I felt that I carried on as I was doing. One of the reasons was if I carried on as I was doing, I wouldn't live till I was 25. That recklessness was quite substantial. But anyway, so that's not that you're trying to make painful events in people's lives, but often that's a trigger. And so when things are painful, or there is some kind of crisis or disaster, rather than just for the young people to be sort of encouraged to just go into distraction or just pretending it didn't happen or getting away from it, to use that crisis time, like a beloved relative dies, or or a friend has died, or there's some kind of major dukkha of some kind in the world, to help them to look at that feeling. So this is the feeling of dukkha. This is the mind that I can't get away from this. So rather than trying to get away or distract or go numb, turn attention to that. So this is exactly what meditation's helpful for. It helps us to work with that experience of dukkha. This is exactly what we don't want to happen. Here it is. It feels this way. So again, you don't want to engineer any crises, but if they do happen, they can be put to work in a helpful way. The other thing is by teaching by example. Just like being living in a way, having attitudes that the 20-something they see that and they say, "Oh, I'd really like to be that way." Dad is so cool. He never gets flustered. He doesn't get angry with anyone. He's always caring, paying. Hey, I don't know. Maybe it's got something to do with this meditation stuff he's always rabbling on about. So seriously, people learn by example far more than they do by books or talks. So if you can be, putting you on the spot, if you can be a good example and say, "Well, hey, I really want to be like Dad," then that's going to have its effect. Even if on the surface level they might not express that or say that or just try to avoid that, if just a little, a layer or two down, they go, "Wow, Dad is just so irritatingly good. He's so helpful. It's really annoying." But then something is saying that there's an admiring quality there as well, and so just patiently embodying those helpful qualities of a sapurisa, like I was saying, that can be a really powerful message that when a person's right, then they can respond to.
Thank you very much, Bhante.
Yeah. Now, could you ask Frances Gracia?
Hi, Bhante. My question is a bit of an Achilles heel at the moment. And I do try to do what you talked about earlier on, but I don't have a car, so I have to go on public transport a lot, and a lot of people are not wearing masks. And what I end up doing is glaring at them with my mask on, and sometimes I actually go up because a lot of people have them on their chins, and I say, would you mind putting your mask up, or something like that. But I'm not sure I can generate the loving kindness and sort of smile at them, but I've got to sort of try and just look at them, as you said, like an empty, it's just my eyes seeing, so that I don't get upset or mad or irritated. Irritated is probably the main thing. And okay, it's generated through fear, because I don't want to get COVID, and I also don't want to give it to anyone else. But what can I do so that when I'm on a tram or a train, how do I mindfully just look at them and just see? Well, tell me, please.
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. Firstly, just to be ready to appreciate your own feeling of irritation or anxiety, and when you get on the bus or on the tram, on the train, then say, oh, here's that, oh no, half the people have got their masks around their neck feeling. That's what this is.
Right.
And having kindness for your own grumpy, irritated, complaining feeling that has arisen. That not saying that you like it or that it's beautiful, but here it is. And so that, because trying to climb over our negative reactions to get to a place where we're happy and loving on the other side doesn't really work very well. So it's so the first thing I would say is be accepting of your own sort of hard-heartedness, grumpy feelings. Okay, here's that grumpy, critical feeling, and so then the next part I would say is to bring up into mind, these are the fellow living beings that I have radiating kindness towards. These are my fellow travellers in life, and to, rather than the mind just believing, oh, those people who don't wear masks, that instantly makes them other, to just use phrases, make things up using your own language, your own phraseology, your own way of putting it. That we are fellow human beings sharing a life together. Then what can I do to help us get through this safely together? So the languaging thing, so it's not me and them, those people, but it's us. That this is our shared life, our shared reality, and it's a really interesting that it's so, our habit is, particularly amongst strangers, to so easily create me and them, so that I'm here and that's those people. And as soon as you hear your mind talking about those people, then to flag that, catch that, and say, well, no, there isn't those people. There's us. I'm one of those people. There's just us, and just even a simple phrase like "it's just us," and then that can help remove that alienation and harshness in the mix. And some people will respond, some people will just say, get out of my face, who do you think you are? And then make them even more determined to sort of breathe on you or cough in your face to cause you to be upset. But if you just, again, choosing the right amount, choosing the right time, when to speak up, when to keep quiet, then those powers of discernment that we have, then to the best of your ability, and then seeing what works. When you approach somebody on the train or the bus, and what brings about a good result, what brings about something that helps people to warm to you and ready to sense of yes, we share this life together. It's not going to work all the time, but some of the time it will. So you just learn from the things that bring a of beneficial results.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Nancy, would you like?
Is empty of self and that which belongs to a self. There's I think it's a dialogue between the Buddha and Venerable Sariputta. He says, empty, empty. When people say things are empty, what do they mean by empty? And then the Buddha says, empty of self and what belongs to a self. So that's the principal way of understanding it. It's also that empty of sort of intrinsic independence. So I can say, this is my teacup. It is a cup, but it's not essentially a cup. It was some earth in the ground and some sand on a beach, and they were mixed with water and shaped in this form and cast into this mold. But it's just earth and sand and put together in this form, and it'll hold together for a while. But then at a certain time it'll break, and it'll no longer be a cup. So this particular formation, and calling it a cup, is a convenient fiction.
So it's transient. It's ever shifting in its form.
Yeah. So the calling it a thing is an approximation. It's more of an event that has this particular shape at this particular time.
And it's also a process.
Yeah, exactly.
I understand now. Okay, I get it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
The last one, Ken.
Hi, Bhante. I have a question around making decisions and mindful decisions, because there is so much that is being conditioned in us as human beings, and the past is very much defining what decisions we make, and also how wise they are. And there are also other things like attachments to whether that's a family aspect or any other aspect, and then it ends up as like a product of all these things. And I was just curious, what your thoughts are around whether there is anything like that, like decision making, if we are mindful enough, because it almost like unfolds. But I was just curious about your thoughts about it.
I talk about this quite often because decision making, even though we might have an insight into like the body is not self, or perceptions are not self, thoughts are not self, or emotions are not self, even that. Of it, that kind of at the bottom of the heap is decision making. It really feels like there's somebody who's deciding, that there's me who's making a choice, even though you can see a thought is just an empty form, or an emotion even, but decisions and making choices, it really seems like there is a person who is the chooser or the decider. And then also with the teachings on karma and its results and such like. So, but if it's really explored and looked at, and I think I'm just remembering, I think I included this in a book that I did recently called Mind is What Matters. I think there's a section in that on the anatomy of a decision. It's a book I did last year. And so if the process of decision making is sort of deconstructed a little bit, then it can be seen that it's really mindfulness and wisdom that is the source of decision making, and that the appearance of it being me as a person who decides is, and so then that drawing upon the words that are matching the meaning that the mind wishes to express. So the memory is not self, the understanding is not self, the language is not self, the wishing is not self, and then the words that form in order to fulfill that the meaning, those are not self either. So when a decision and the decision-making process deconstructed like that, every aspect of it is not me or mine. And then the more that the quality of mindfulness awareness is developed, is recognized that what guides choices is mindfulness and wisdom. And that more fully and completely, that's what, it's not a person deciding, but rather it's the citta, the heart, responding naturally to the time, the place, the situation. So if you look at the Buddha's teachings in the Pali Canon, the Buddha often was speaking spontaneously, and there's Ajahn Amaro used to often quote a dialogue between the Buddha and Sariputta, I think at the sutta called the Eastern Gatehouse. And then he gave a Dhamma talk, and then he turned to Sariputta and said, Sariputta, have you ever heard me give this teaching before? And then Sariputta said, no, I haven't, Venerable Sir. And the Buddha said, no, I've never heard it before either. It occurred to me as I was speaking. It's new to me too. And then he, as Ajahn Amaro would tell the story, then he went on to ask Sariputta, so do you believe that it's true? And then Sariputta said, well, not yet. And then the Buddha asked him why. It's kind of in front of a whole assembly of people, and it seems like Sariputta's being rude or defiant or disrespectful of his own teacher. And then, but then the Buddha, and then Sariputta explained, well, because I haven't had a chance to test it out. And then the Buddha said, good, Sariputta, good. Ajahn Amaro used to tell this story over and over again, because he said, even though Sariputta was the Buddha's chief disciple and trusted the Buddha's wisdom intrinsically, still he knew he needed to test it out and see whether it was true for himself before he would say, yes, this is the fact. So that the Buddha spoke spontaneously, and similarly Ajahn Amaro would always speak spontaneously and wouldn't even sort of know where it was going to go. But it's not really Ajahn Amaro giving a Dhamma talk, it's mindfulness and wisdom speaking, responding to the people, the situation, what's just been said. And so that's why it's called a Dhamma Desana. Desana means like darshan. It's a demonstration of Dhamma. So it's not even really an explanation, but it's a manifestation of Dhamma. It's a demonstration of Dhamma, if it's a real Dhamma talk. So that it's not really a person speaking, but rather there is mindfulness and wisdom is guiding the choice of words in order to convey a meaning with a hoped for result. I can see in your little box, kind of your head is nodding and sort of making agreeing gestures. So it looks like the meaning is getting across. So therefore, the result here is, I think I'm being understood. That's a good thing. And so that again, I think it's in that book, The Mind is What Matters. It's called The Anatomy of a Decision. And so you might find pretty much the same as I've just spelled out there. If you're interested, you can find it on the website, or you could probably, if you visit Amaravati, you can pick up a copy from the temple.
Thank you very much, Bhante. Very appreciated.
Thank you, Bhante. Now, actually, 1.5 hours, Bhante, you have shared your understanding with our audience. I'm very much grateful. Although you are in a retreat, you kindly, out of compassion, agreed and delivered your wonderful talk today for us. It's like it is indeed an inspiration for all of us, as a lot of people are suffering due to COVID and loneliness and anxiety. This is actually a great inspiration for all of us. On behalf of the London Buddhist Vihara and on behalf of the Sangha, I would like to convey my heartfelt gratitude to you, Bhante. Thank you so much. Wish you good health, long life, and protection from all the dangers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
And thank you, Bhante, for arranging everything.
Thank you, Bhante.